Hello everybody, Justin from Playing Board Games here, and today I'm going to be talking about 4 hopes that I have for the new campaign format. If you don't know, Arkham has recently announced, well, FFG has recently announced that Arkham is going to be having a new campaign format going forward, where instead of the traditional 1 box a year of 8, well, realistically 6 to 10 campaigns that we've been getting, we're going to be having 2 different formats for campaign releases in either a small form campaign of 3 scenarios or a long for 5 with some wiggle room to stretch as needed in either direction. I will say, I'll link a video to the announcement article if you did want to kind of get more in line with what was happening here. But I will also say, as to kind of lead this whole thing in, I am going to be, my opinions on this are still pretty neutral. I'm not really bummed by it like some people are. I'm not really super excited about it because as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I guess I'm excited about the fact that they're still releasing campaigns, like new product is coming out. That's coming along more in the lines of what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. So this isn't going to be an inflammatory video where I go crazy and start saying the new buzzword. A new buzzword that I've been hearing is shrinkflation on these comments, which I would understand the sentiment if the boxes, we knew the prices of all the releases, but we actually don't know the prices of the releases yet. If the prices go down to match the amount of cards that may be in these boxes, then yeah, we can start talking about that. But if we're getting the same amount of cards, then and the price stays the same, that's not really shrinkflation, right? Like, that's kind of my whole thought on it. Very reactionary, which is understandable, but I will say, I skimmed through the comments in the last video. A lot of people are actually pretty positive about this change. The loud people might be... there might be loud people for each side, both positive and negative, but this video is kind of more talking about the design because the design is what's interesting to me. When I see a small 3 or 5 scenario box for those kind of things, for how the scenario counts are, I'm kind of just thinking more, what can they do with it? So these are my 4 hopes that I have for the new campaign format that we got here. So, first up, explore the campaign structure in interesting ways. Now, what does this mean? I don't necessarily mean that this is like Hemlock Vale or Drowned City, right? Because or even Scarlet Keys. Like, those are interesting ways that a campaign structure could be explored. The thing we know about Hemlock Vale is you really play 6 scenarios, right? You play 3-day and 3-night scenarios. There are the preludes in between that kind of make the campaign feel meatier, but the majority of the campaign is done through those 6 scenarios. There are more scenarios in the box. So this is something that could actually feasibly happen with the new campaign format. They might say 5 scenario campaign, but maybe there's 7 or 8 scenarios in the box, right? And there's some variance in how you play those. But I'm not talking about that kind of scenario structure. I'm going to be going a little bit deeper, or campaign structure I'm going into a little bit deeper, which I'll be doing right away. I'm also not talking about Scarlet Keys, where it's completely open, but Scarlet Keys is also a very interesting way of exploring campaign structure. I wouldn't mind if they revisited the concept of an open world campaign, because I think with less scenarios that they need to put into the box, or like less scenario when it comes to the design size, the more focus they could put into the individual scenarios themselves. I'm also not talking about Drowned City, where you play it backward or forward. That's neat, but it's not really particularly engaging in how it is done, right? Because in both, the 2 times this has happened, both in Drowned City officially and Alice in Wonderland unofficially through custom content, while these ideas of the forward and backwards were there for campaign structure, there was very little changes to things besides some balance stuff, right? And also the interludes that you got in Wonderland, right? So it's a neat way of doing it, but it's not really what I'm talking about here. But I just have to say those because those are relevant campaign structures that were explored in previous campaigns. So what I'm talking about here is going to kind of carry into the next hope that I have here. But to me, when I heard them say that the boxes were going to be 3 and 5 scenario campaigns, the first thing that came to my mind, well, maybe the second thing that came to my mind, was, what does that mean, right? What does that mean in terms of game design? So if our campaign structure, let's just say, like, so our campaign, our box comes with 3 scenarios, but does the campaign itself fit into this 3 scenario box? Is there a way that we can take this idea of what a scenario is, what a campaign is, and kind of turn it on its head? This is an example that I've said in a previous video. I'm going to reiterate here because it's the one that kind of, I think, best surmises what I'm trying to get across when I'm talking about this, explore the campaign structure in interesting ways. So let's say, for example, the campaign was the sequel to Forgotten Age, the Forgotten Age 2, right? Electric Yigaloo, right? The first scenario is you get underground and you're like, okay, we're just in the preliminary cave network. We're going to explore our way through. And then at the end of the scenario, we reach the MacGuffin, we open the door, everything's great. The second scenario, you're in Yoth, right? You're in a temple inside Yoth. So you're going to go through the temple, maneuver through the death traps, right? And then you kind of like get to the end. Again, you get to the MacGuffin, you grab the crystal, but then another door opens up and you're like, we can go deeper, right? So you go deeper. You go into this room, you find Yig, you find a bunch of serpents. It's like, okay, well, this is bad. But, you know, you have found the ultimate prize that you're looking for, the Relic of Ages Super Awesome Edition, right? You grab it. And then that's 3 scenarios. Is the campaign over? No. You've messed. Yig is pissed. You are like, oh crap, we need to get out of here. Scenario 4 of this 3 scenario campaign. You go back to the temple that was in the second scenario. Very similar map layout. Maybe the exact same mechanics of the last one. But now you are fleeing the temple. You're trying to find the exit desperately. While Yig and other snakes are trying to chase you down. You get to the end. We're at the cave system. We're at the door of the temple. We open the temple door again because it closed, right? All right, we're out. Scenario campaign done? No, you're still in the cave. So scenario 5 of the 3 scenario campaign is you have to now get from the temple door to the entrance of the cave, and maybe, in classic Doom of Etzley fashion, blow up the passage with some dynamite, right? So this was immediately what I started to think about when what a 3 scenario campaign could actually mean more than a 3 scenario campaign, right? So let's just say, for going back to this example where this was a scenario that had a campaign that has 3 scenarios, but the idea was that you played 2 of the scenarios again, right? So I think that this would be something that is a structure that is not something that could be that they've done in the past, but I think that could be a really cool way of extending the length of a campaign while just like kind of like turning the campaign on its head a little bit in ways that we haven't seen before. Another example that we came up on the channel was, what if there was in this 3 scenario box, the idea was that like we had like, this is like where the hand-me-down challenge came in. There are generations involved in this. So the first one, you come to the thing where it's like, okay, it's 1920s. We're at the rock, the ritual rock. What can we do here? Then you play the scenario again. It's like 1930. We're at the ritual rock. Something is happening again. Scenario 4, the ritual rock, right? And then like it's like 10 years later, like scenario 3, like 10 years later again. It's like, what if there was this idea where a scenario in the campaign is like turned on its head to allow for a longer campaign while still fitting the definition of a 3 scenario box? Because I think that's one of those things where they're setting expectations, but they're not necessarily, things can change, right? Like their internal design terminology can change. They might try out things that are new and different, right? Because that's what designers like to do with the games that they're playing. Like, I know a lot of people talk about how it feels like they're retreading things with this new core box, and I think that they are retreading things with this core box because there are pieces of the original core that were very good. So why not just kind of like tweak those and tighten those and then make the parts that weren't so strong stronger, right? And I think it's one of those things where that it's not always going to be the idea of this. Like, the designers want to design new and interesting things, so I'm hoping they do it through the campaign structure. This carries into the next idea, which is constantly dig deeper into what it means to be a scenario, in quotes. So, what's a scenario in Arkham, right? It's something with acts and agendas, locations, and an encounter deck, and you have like an objective you're trying to complete, right? Usually they are played from 30 minutes to 2 hours, right? Just generally that's what a scenario is. But the question with this is what is a scenario, right? How much can a scenario have its corners stretched, its mechanics pushed, its cards bent to be something else, right? Like that can offer some replayability and some variety when it comes to it, because they've talked a lot in the past that they really want an Arkham Horror campaign to be replayable. We saw that was a big selling point for the Feast of Hemlock Vale, right? And I think that that is something that is even more important when it comes to specifically a 3-scenario campaign. I'm going to tell you, I think a 5-scenario campaign is going to be more replayable just on the tin. I think that I think that 5 is actually, in my mind, an almost perfect number. I think a perfect number would be 6, but I think 5 is pretty good as well. But the idea is that in this 3-scenario box, what is a scenario? What can we bring to a scenario to make this scenario more replayable? What can we do to make it more interesting on play-to-play? Because a 3-scenario campaign, in theory, you could play it like in a day, right? Like Travis, Brent, and I can probably record a 3-scenario campaign in one night, right? So then the idea is, what if we played that exact same scenario again next week? So we finished it in one night. Next week we're going to run it again. What can be done to change that scenario from one scenario to the other, right? Could it be an entirely new setup process, right? Could it be a decision that we made in one during the setup of the scenario can just change like an enemy that we fight in that, right? Like maybe like an entire enemy set is swapped, right? Maybe there's like a big thing they used to always do in the past is have locations change to match up, to kind of just add some fun replayability that came with it. And I think so that's something that they could very easily continue doing, and I hope they do continue doing it. But also, what if there were just like fun little twists on setup, right? Where it was just like, draw one of these cards, right? Or like pull a token, and that token is going to give this effect for the scenario, right? Why is a scenario always what we thought a scenario was? What else could a scenario be? And I hope the design team digs into this. Of course, this is all just these are all like my first instincts when I was thinking about what does a 3-scenario campaign mean? And I think that this is what's interesting to me. And I mean, I've been pretty impressed by what the designers have done. So I'm hoping that they're also having similar thoughts in their heads, because I think that there's a lot that could be explored within the space of what a scenario is. And I would love to see them do it. Hydration break. All right. Next up, design campaigns with built-in challenge modes. This goes back to my previous thing. So these next 2 points are going to be a lot more simple. They're not as like design meta-y. But again, Travis, Brent, and I, we beat one of the 3 scenarios. We played Children of Blood and we beat it in one night. We're like, yay, we're done the campaign. Next week we're going to run it back with new decks, right? But what if there was a challenge mode at the start of the campaign that you could just like tick a box for to run it again, right? So to me, this new 3-scenario campaign format seems like it would be perfectly viable to start actually building the idea of like a roguelike Arkham mode, right? Where it's one of those things where you could take on like the burden of vampires, right? Where you, in each scenario, you shuffle in like 3 more vampire enemies, and the first vampire enemy drawn each round gets Surge, right? Like that could be something that they could like, I think, just build in from the start, that I think would be very interesting and very engaging to see. These challenge modes could also be like, I think they could get like out of the box with it, right? Like I know the community would probably be able to do this pretty well. I know I'm probably going to consider doing it myself, but I would love to see some like purposeful design decisions from the designers to add some replayability to the campaigns that go beyond just, again, what's the scenario, what's the cards, what can happen, like kind of like if things just kind of went wild and went crazy and we didn't really care too much about balance because they're entirely optional, what could that mean, right? Maybe there's like enemies that, like an elite enemy that spawns in a scenario and it never goes to the encounter deck, but it's like double-sided, right? So on one side, you're just using the normal version, but the challenge mode, you use like the elite version. This is something that I know that Nick is attempting with Children of Blood, where he's said that he is working hard to add difficulty changes that go beyond just the token bag. And I'm personally very intrigued by that idea, and I'm interested to see what that means, because I think that then gives a reason why you would want to try to play a campaign on a harder difficulty rather than just the tokens in the bag. And that's something that I am particularly interested to see, so I'm hoping that this is just the first of many attempts to design with that philosophy in mind. And my last one here, which might ruffle a few feathers, is hyper focus on the amount of XP earned, carrying this philosophy to player cards. When they did the announcement stream about the shorter campaigns, I was actually kind of flabbergasted about the amount of comments asking about how much XP was going to be in the campaigns. People like earning XP. They'd like to make their decks powerful, and I totally get that, right? I have never been one of those players. Travis Bryn and I have never been one of those players. It's kind of like, I would say, the thing that we talk about the most in our videos that I think that we get the most general pushback from the community on, because it's not for everybody, right? Like, I know that there is the idea of playing on higher difficulties, but with the card pool and Legacy, it was a lot easier to still do that. So we instead decided to give ourselves challenge modes, or limited our collection to kind of fill that box. The burden of knowledge of getting better and more skilled at Arkham Horror is something you can't really come back from. So it's like one of those things where, like, we're never going to be as bad as we once were, right? So it's like we're always improving. So like that also makes it easier to earn XP. So it's kind of like cascading on that. And I'm not here to say that there should be less XP earned. But like, for example, Drowned City, the most recent campaign, had way too much XP that it made the final scenario a lot easier than it should have been, as well as some other design decisions. But I do think it comes down to the fact that just there's so much XP in that campaign due to its push your luck format that it kind of becomes just like a stomp in the last scenario. And that's not what you really want, especially when you're going up against Big Daddy Cthulhu, right? So I think that what I hope from this is not that there should be less XP earned, but I do think there should be less XP earned, but I think that the designer should use like a microscope to focus on the XP earned, how XP is earned, and what the numbers are for it. Because in theory, there's really not too much of a big issue when it comes to balancing this, right? Like, say, for example, in an 8-scenario campaign, there is, trying to think of a number there's 40 XP, right? So then you would earn 5 XP a scenario, roughly, right? Not necessarily counting the final scenario, so it's like one of those, right? Like, so let's just say, like, yeah, like, divide that by 7, right? So like 42, right? So it's like 6 XP a scenario, right? But let's say, for example, in a 5-scenario campaign, there would be 42 XP, would be like 10 XP earned. So you do get to upgrade your deck more. Upgrade your deck less, but with the same amount of XP, right? So like that could be a thing that can happen. But like, I think that is the easy part of this, right? To just like match the old XP levels. But what I think they need to do is, my hope anyway, is that they take this idea of of like looking at the amount of XP earned and what does that mean for a 5-scenario campaign or a 3-scenario campaign, and how can we make it better balanced, more focused than just like having it be the old way. Like, say, for example, there was in like a 3-scenario campaign, there was an interlude in the middle of a scenario. Like, you flip an act and it's like, read the interlude. And it's like, you have discovered something, right? Like, you've made the objective, you open the door and there's someone inside. Like, you can spend, each investigator can spend any experience earned in this scenario Or like even like an investigator can each spend 3 XP to put an ally in their deck. And then at the end of the scenario, they have to make their deck legal again in some way, right? Like, what if that would be something that could happen? Because that would be interesting, kind of seeing like also like a story-based progression, because I know that's something a lot of people also say, where they like upgrading their deck because it feels like progression through an RPG system. And I think it is one of the best parts of Arkham, right? But I think that there is too much on the past for better and for worse in terms of XP design, and I feel like the designers should kind of focus on a new philosophy for this, or at least try something out for the first few, maybe not the first one so people don't, you know, flip their tables when it happens. But I think there should be like, the XP idea I think needs to be looked at again and kind of figure out what that means in terms of this new campaign structure. Beyond that, I also think that this philosophy should carry over to the player cards. I think that 5 XP and 4 XP cards should design to be more as inclusive, like as one-ofs in your deck, right? And I think that there should be easier ways to find them. So then, like, I think that the decks as a whole should get better around a big card as opposed to just like adding a bunch of big cards. Again, I don't expect everyone to agree with me on this. This is very much my own personal preference for how XP is, and I understand and respect that everybody is different for that. I do wish the people who loved XP also respected the idea that maybe I'm So like it really comes down to, I feel like the people who like earning a lot of XP like doing it because they like to crush the game. And it's one of those things where it's like, we want the game to work against us a little bit harder, and XP is the way that you are able to get ahead of the game so easily. So maybe it could be one of the challenge modes they implement, right? Going back to my previous point. But who knows? As I said, in the video where I talk about this, a lot of this I'm going to kind of like wait and see. I'm going to kind of just like not really form any opinions on the new campaign structure until I start playing it, because I'm not really the kind of guy who's going to start making an outlandish thought or opinion on, like, I'm not going to form anything too solid until I actually play it. I'm excited to play more Arkham. I'm excited to play more scenarios. Like, I'm excited about that part of it, but I'm very curious to see how this design philosophy is going to carry over to the new one, because I think there's a lot of things they need to do, they could do, and I think that there's a lot of questions they need to ask as the design team of being like, so what can we do to explore this new design space that's potentially available to us, because I think that would be very cool to see. In the meantime, I want to thank everyone who watched this video and who watched the previous one. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. I'll be back for another Arkham video very soon. If you want to support the channel, like, comment, subscribe, or if you want to join our Patreon down below, that is another great viable option as well. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.